Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in for our first ever virtual Pitch-A-Thon. My name is Randy Kleiner. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SeriesFest. And this is the South by Southwest Film Festival Episodic Pitch-A-Thon presented by SeriesFest. This was a program we've been developing for almost 2 years that we were so excited to present live at this year's South by Southwest Film Festival and in Austin. And as many of you know, unfortunately, South by Southwest was unable to happen, but we are so grateful that they were willing to work with us to take this special event and pivot it to a virtual Pitch-A-Thon, the first ever, I believe. Huge thank you to the entire programming team at South by Southwest, and especially to Janet Pearson, Jody Arlington, Austin Newark, and all of you at South by. You know, again, we're so grateful to have worked with you to create this event and to bring it live virtually on YouTube. And this is going to be really exciting and fun, and we're in for a real treat here. So here's how this will work. We have 6 projects that were selected that will be pitched this evening. 5 of the projects were selected from amongst the South by Southwest filmmakers and creators who had films and series in official selection at South by Southwest this year, and 1 pitch is from a SeriesFest alum. All of these projects are unproduced, and each project will have 5 minutes to pitch. 5 minutes, so pitchers, make sure you've got your clocks ready. After that, it will be followed by 7 minutes of feedback from our expert panelists, and I would like to introduce them to you all now. So panelists, if you could please turn on your video and join me on the screen. I will introduce you. And thank you all for donating your time and being here with us. I think we've got everybody here. So first off, Susan Lewis from STARZ. Give us a little wave. Hi, Susan. Thank you. We have Travis Tammero from CAA. We've got Christine Davila from Stage 13. Christine, I think she's coming online here. We've got Jenny Halper from Maven Pictures and Caleb Ward from Entertainment Studios. So we've got 5 incredible panelists who are excited to give feedback. As we all know, pitching is truly an art form, so we really appreciate you taking the time to give your valuable feedback and be here with us. Right now, I'm going to ask you to turn your screens back off and go back on mute so we can get the show officially started. So here's how this will go. So after this, the panelists will choose a winning pitch, which will be announced on Thursday, and I'll give more information on that later, but let's just get right to it and have some fun. So I'm going to bring out our first set of pitchers for the project Under the Influence. So if Nico Quinones and Brandon Fernandez join me on the screen. And we're going to wait for them to come up. We're going to let them say hello, make sure we can hear them nice and loud.
Hey, Randy, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for being here with us, Nico.
Of course.
Great. All right, when you are ready, you may begin to pitch.
Do we have Brandon on the line yet?
Oh, let me see. I don't see Brandon. Let's give him a second here and see if
let me make sure. Yeah, let me make sure.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, I think Brandon's coming on right now, Nico.
Wait.
Brandon,
Yep.
Oh, you're muted. You there?
Hi guys, sorry about that.
No worries. Listen, this is a lot of fun. First ever virtual Pitch-A-Thon. We're gonna get through this. It's gonna be great. Thank you both. And I'm gonna get off your screen, and when you're ready, your 5 minutes will begin.
Awesome. Well, hi guys, my name is Brandon Fernandez. Sorry about the disruption. I'm the associate producer of a documentary series titled Under the Influence, which takes a unflinching look at the meteoric rise of social media and the smartphone, asking many of the questions we are afraid to ask ourselves. And with that, I turn over to our director, Nico Quinones.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Nico Quinones. I'm a documentary filmmaker based in Miami, and this project began for me back when a music festival started to fall apart in the Bahamas that you guys might have heard about. And I grabbed my camera and started talking to some of these folks that were getting sent back to Miami. And rather than ask them questions about the sort of the news that was making headlines, I really started to ask them why they went, and focus on the impetus that caused them, and how big a role social media played in the actions that they took. And throughout all the conversations that we started to have, although we were very sensitive with them, and we made sure that we acknowledged our own roles in this as well, all of these conversations started to highlight elements of addiction. Across the country, meanwhile, a teacher named Skipper Coates was doing an experiment in her classroom where she wrote one question on the board. What my parents don't know about social media is blank. She handed out index cards to all the kids, and she let these middle schoolers know that their answers would be kept totally anonymous. What came back on these cards was totally shocking. In a lot of cases, it was heartbreaking, but in every single case, it showed how it felt to be a middle schooler dealing with pervasive social media in the classroom. That was a shock to us because Pleasant Grove, as this small town, devoutly Mormon and highly conservative town where a lot of parents had put stopgap measures in place to keep their kids away from social media had sort of managed to creep through. So we brought the story and Skipper's experiment really back to Miami, Florida, to our own urban landscape, spoke to an exhausted guidance counselor down here who was dealing with some of the same issues and grappling with some of the same issues that Skipper and her students were out in Utah. And the through lines that we could see between the kids in Florida and the kids in Utah made us realize that this was emblematic of the national and even international discussion. And also with that, we realized that this thing had to be episodic so that we could explore all the different spheres that this story really touches. So next up, we spoke to Richard Harris at the New York Times, to him and his entire team about the deep dive investigation they did about the real data and numbers behind all the influence, both fake and real, that is bought and sold online every single day. We spoke to models and influencers from all walks of life so that we could get both sides of the social media coin. They told us about how some folks have used it as a business tool, a way to build their own confidence or personal support group. But then we also talked to psychologists and behavioral experts who told us about some of the real dark and sadistic ways social media can be used as a tool by sociopaths, even pedophiles, as an extremely effective mask to carry out their actions online. Throughout all these spheres, the same thing that we keep seeing, the connecting line, was the addiction to the supercomputer in our pockets. Now, more than ever, with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, our story and all of our stories are being brought online. More and more experiences are being brought online, and we're experiencing both the positive and negative effects of that, being forced to be mindful about that and ask ourselves some of the really tough questions that Brandon and I have been asking ourselves for a while now. So we built a very specific narrative structure with this project, which allows the audience to go on personal journeys with characters that they can actually identify with, and also take that deep dive into some of the headlines that amounts to just much more than doom and gloom. In exploring all the spheres that we've explored throughout this project so far, it's pretty much safe to say that everyone can agree that we are all in some way under the influence. Thank you.
You just nailed that in 4 minutes. Very, very impressive. Thank you both. I'm going to ask our panelists to join me on screen now to give their feedback. So if you can turn your video, and you have to turn your mics on. Thank you. And also, I know, Christine, we missed you quickly in the introduction. So if you could just give a wave there from stage 13, thank you for joining us. And Jenny, want to hop over to you for your first set of comments.
Yeah, I think first of all, you guys did a fantastic job. The pitch was really, really concise, had a ton of energy, got a really good sense of what the series was going to be. My very quick notes are, I think the log line that you present at the beginning could be a little bit more dynamic and could go a little bit more into that you're exploring the positives and negatives of the addiction to the supercomputer. I would have a few more sort of human examples and examples of the people that you've talked to, and what a few more examples of the episodes might be. And then I would I could use a little bit more of a sense of the structure of the series, because I still didn't quite understand why it couldn't be simply a doc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Panelists, jump in as you feel.
I would agree with what Jenny said about the structure. I had that same question. I was curious about how many episodes you were envisioning this as, and then also who your audience is meant to be, who you're gearing it towards. And then the last one is, what's the takeaway going to be? What do you want the audience to feel? What do you want them to do after they've finished watching the series?
Nico, can you maybe answer any of those questions? Because I think that would be useful.
Sure. I can let Brendan jump in on the 8-episode structure that we've laid out 8 episodes. That's the material so far. And absolutely, the takeaway is just getting that deeper dive with actually identifying with characters and coming away with more than just doom and gloom. With the idea that although this remains in our pocket and although we grapple with it every day, it's coming away with mindful takeaways that you feel could be actually useful to your life in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, we structured our 8 episodes. I guess the original one was about fire. It's titled Move Fast, and just to give you an example, Move Fast and Break Things, which is Zuckerberg's whole motto, as well as, Billy McFarland never knows the story. But as far as our target demographic goes, we kind of want to say all ages and ranges and all walks of life. We have episodes, about politics called the 142 character presidency, the Kardashian effect, Pleasant Grove, which we just discussed briefly. That's kind of the structure we've created, where you take 2 stories, parallel them and interweave them together, and you find that the through line is still the same, at least in that first episode that we discussed. But yeah, I mean, our 8-episode structure is kind of appeals to people from all walks of life and ages demographic. And I think we titled them accordingly. We have but the bots as well, which we discussed briefly in New York Times. So we're grabbing stories from the headlines that everyone reads, whether they're clickbait or have permanence, and putting them into this machine we just created. We grab 2 stories and both on the micro and macro level have a conversation about our addiction to the devices in our pockets.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just sort of going back to the pitch as a whole, which it was great, very tight. It was very, very concise. My one note would be to get that call to action in sooner, because I was in a similar boat with Susan, where towards the end, I still wasn't sure sort of what we're supposed to take away from this. And so getting that call to action in sooner, I would say, is really going to sort of tighten things up for you.
Absolutely.
And just to jump in, one of the only things that I always like to tell clients or anybody when they're pitching is, why now? It's always important to say to the buyers right away, why is this the moment for them to pick up the series? And if it's a series, after you have the why now answered, then you want to sort of explain, when we were talking about structure before, what's the hook per episode? Because 8 episodes is kind of a lot. And I hate to ever critique anybody's layout, but what we're seeing is like the 3 to 5 is really working a lot more and being bought a lot more. So for each episode, if you're able to say, like, if you get into the deeper conversation, it can be nice to sort of have the hook of what keeps them coming back per episode. It's totally the Kardashian effect, politics, all the other things you mentioned are great subjects, but at the end of those episodes, what is the thing that's going to make them click? Everybody always wants to know that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Travis.
Oh, and Nico, I'm from Miami.
Oh,
Me too. Well, Coral Springs, so close enough. South Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Ian, anything to add?
I would echo what a couple people have said. I think as I was following along, I was looking for emotions. I think the minute that someone says addiction, you are already going somewhere. It's bad, the ills, and I get the awareness of it. But I think if you get into what's more always resonant is, the emotional quality. I think someone said the human stories, and I think that could be part of it, but it should be part of your pitch, how you frame, the feelings and the emotions of, what the effects are. And in a way, you can also, on the B-side, tie that with, what your takeaway will hopefully alleviate, or affect those kind of feelings and emotions that are things that everyone can just, understand, and be related and have it be relatable that way.
thank you.
Great feedback. Any final thoughts from our panelists? All right, well then, thank you so much. Thank you, Nico and Brandon, for being the first ones up.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. If you can all turn your videos and your mute back up, we'll go to our second project. This is going so well so far. Very exciting. Thank you, Brandon. All right, on to our second pitch. This is 2 of 6 if you're just joining us. We have a great series we're going to hear about called Wild Combination. So if Delic Miller and Alex Hers will join me on screen. Let's make sure we've got volume working for both of you.
Randy.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
You guys sound and look great, so I'm going to get out of your way, and you can begin your pitch when you're ready.
Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Alex Hers. I'm a writer-director from Northern California. My freshman year at Northwestern University, I wrote, directed, and edited my first feature film, A Normal Life, which was distributed on Amazon Prime. I moved out to LA last year after I graduated and started working on this series, which is inspired by my own college experiences. At the beginning of my sophomore year, my best friend told me that he wanted to take his own life. He ultimately left school to seek treatment, and I didn't see him for an entire year. Not a month after, in November of 2016, the political landscape shifted drastically, and suddenly the paradigm of my world and everyone's world was changed forever. For as long as I could remember, I had been told that my college years and early 20s were going to be the best years of my life, and instead, here I was, coming of age at the crossroads of 2 like cataclysmic life events. And like many of my friends and the students around me, I was overwhelmed by feelings of helplessness about my future. My generation was, and still is, experiencing the weight of trying to make it in a world that seems like it's about to fall apart at any minute now, especially more than ever. Yet there aren't any existing shows that directly address these widespread fears and anxieties. Wild Combination is a show born from this period in my life, from everything personal as well as universal. It's a half-hour road trip show and a coming-of-age story about uncertainty, friendship, sexuality, religion, mental health. In the end, it's just about 3 friends trying to figure out who they are and where they're going. Now, if my stress-inducing intro did not turn you off, let me start by saying that this show isn't all doom and gloom. I personally don't want to watch a show about sad 20-somethings. I assume you don't either. It's a dramedy filled with absurdity and dark humor. Think Better Things meets Atlanta meets Little Miss Sunshine. It's character-driven and watchable, a little artsy, but an easy binge watch. Most importantly, Wild Combination is about character, specifically our 3 protagonists. Emma is our main focus, the show's through line. She's a smart, quiet California Jew, independent and emotionally intelligent, but she won't let anyone else drive the van. She can sometimes be overprotective and a little controlling, not unlike the creator of this show. Then we have Calvin. He's a biracial Mormon, and he's just trying to figure stuff out right now, like his sexuality and his belief in God. He's clumsy and moody and pretty immature, but every now and again we see flashes of his true inner depth. And then there's Paul, Irish Catholic and gay. Paul is a force of nature. He's smart and charming, and there's just something about him that draws us in. He suffers from severe manic depression like my friend, so his highs are very high and his lows are very low. These guys are complicated and real, and above all, they're just fun to be around. You'll definitely want to join them on their strange trip in Betty the van. As our story begins, the group is coming together again after more than a year apart, and everyone feels distrustful and distant. But they have one collective goal, and that's to road trip from LA back to school in Chicago in an attempt to rebond. From there, the cross-country trip begins, but it's not like what we're used to because they're going the wrong way. So unlike most road trip shows or movies where we end watching the sun set over the Pacific, our characters are going west to east from sunny California into the literal heart of the country. At every place they stop in between, from the Rocky Mountains to the Great Plains, they experience the surreal complexity of modern America and see around them a greater reflection of themselves. There's a hilarious episode where Paul takes Emma and Calvin to a gay strip club in Vegas, and a poignant one where the group spends a night with Calvin's huge Mormon family in Utah. By the end of the 8-episode season, when our characters finally arrive in Chicago and watch the sunrise over Lake Michigan, they will have grown and changed in ways they never thought possible, and their friendship will be altered forever. Seasons 2 through 4 of Wild Combination will focus on Emma, Calvin, and Paul more individually, following them as they navigate life at school and beyond and try to figure out what their place in the world should be. One of the many exciting things I think about Wild Combination is that there are really endless avenues to explore for these 3, given the show's focus on character development and its simple structure. The success of Wild Combination is its universal appeal. Yes, it's a show about young adults, but right now, with what's happening in our world, everyone is wondering, where is my place? Who is most important to me? Will I be okay? Anyone who has struggled with the existentialism of the moment will be able to relate and will find a reflection of themselves in this show. So why not come along for the ride and see where it takes you? At the very least, it's an excuse to get out of the house for a little bit. Join us as we tag along with Emma, Calvin, and Paul and see the world through the eyes of this wild combination. Thank you.
You guys had me at getting out of the house. Thank you so much for your pitch. We just heard a pitch from Wild Combination. I'd like to invite our panelists to join me back on screen with their video and make sure to unmute. And Susan, if we could start with you for feedback this time.
Sure. So that was a great pitch. And also I feel a little intimidated now that you tell us that you made a movie in your first year of college. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
What was I doing? Not that, but I did go to college, so I can relate to the feelings of these kids. It's a very universal story. I think you're right about that. I do wonder about each of the kids having sort of they're all going through this sort of moment that we all go through in terms of figuring out who you are. In terms of their identity, they're each sort of burdened with some heavy things. And I just wonder how you're going to balance that burden of whether it's sort of the you mentioned some mental health issues, just I guess tonally, how you're going to figure that out.
Yeah, can I respond? Are we doing that? Okay, cool. So that's a totally valid question. And it was something that we wrestled with a lot, because it's like, how do you balance these extremely gloomy ideas and also make something entertaining and watchable? And I think the solution for us was approach it from this like dark comedic standpoint, where we're observing them very objectively and we're able to like see what they're going through. And as much as it's heart-wrenching, it's also funny, because like we know people like this, we've seen people act like this, we ourselves have been like this. So it's like, that's our way in. It's like the absurdity of what they're experiencing, if that makes sense. And it's a tone that we tried to strike in our pilot when we made it.
I'd like to chime in. There's a great pitch, very solid. If I'd kind of like to challenge you as well, you being a filmmaker, and having the impetus of the series be getting from LA to Chicago, end of season 1, you're in Chicago. If this is a road trip story, why does this necessarily have to be episodic versus a film if the impetus of the series is the road trip and the road trip is over by the end of season 1? Just sort of as a challenge. And you may not have the answer right now, that's fine, just something to stew over. But that's something that I think about when I hear this pitch is, well, why isn't this just one story as opposed to an episodic?
I had the same thought listening to it.
And I thought you did really well. The pitch was really witty and well done, and you connected it all very well. And the story does feel universal. Not to get too narrow-minded about or to drill down too much, but I think what's important sometimes when you're also pitching, when you're going into certain buyers and places like that, it's good to have a couple comps, maybe from a certain network of like, maybe from the exact network, and being like some shows that you see that have had similar success that you can compare your project to, and then sort of riff off what's different. Sometimes I think that's really helpful when you go into pitch as well.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to the beginning and just say I thought that the way you began your pitch was incredibly effective and sincere, and like Susan said, so impressive that you made a movie your first year of college. It grabbed me immediately, and I love the theme of this show and the idea of what is it to be a young adult who's been told the world is your oyster and then the world around you is falling apart. Like, that's really moving. I agree about comps too, just because it sounds like the tone is just so important, getting that dark comedy right. But I really do want to know what are these episodes going to be? Why does it need to be episodes? How is there enough material to fill an entire season rather than a feature? And if it is going to be ongoing, sort of what's the reason for the road trip being season number 1.
Okay.
Any other feedback from our panelists?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say I agree. The personal introduction was very effective. I think where and the comps would definitely help when you're trying to craft something that's a little unconventional, or the method or approach is unconventional. It's always helpful, but I was having a hard time kind of understanding why, and I swear I was listening, but why these 3 folks, like as far as the casting element, like why these 3 folks, and why do you think these 3 folks are the best people to follow for a really long time to examine, certain the anxieties, and I feel like that's a lot riding on your on 3 characters, as far as like a sample size, what have you, or sort of have it be the best people that you could sort of have a takeaway after being with them. I wonder what if that's ever come up, if as far as like when you talk to people about that, or if it's just me not having really followed the sort of why these 3 folks to explore such a huge social phenomenon.
It's a great question. I just want to interject. So what I had tried to do really quickly is I made the comparison to shows like Better Things in Atlanta and the movie Little Miss Sunshine, kind of like as a mix of theme and tone. But like I think like you guys mentioned, more direct comps could have been more effective throughout the pitch. But I just wanted to bring that up. And yeah, I think like it is something I've thought about a lot. And I think obviously like when you're trying to tackle such big themes, you got to wonder if like your characters can quite literally like shoulder the weight of that, like you mentioned. And I think the reason these characters came to me is just like they are an amalgamation of people who I was friends with and just around in general in college. And so I feel like I can speak as like the most accurately to these people. And I feel like if I'm trying to tackle these themes, their voices and the things they're exploring are going to come out as honestly and genuinely as possible, at least through my voice as I'm writing.
That's fair. Okay.
I have one other question / comment, which is I understand why the title is the title. It doesn't totally grab me as a title. But I could be totally alone in that, but wanted to just flag it.
Okay, it's that's totally fair. It's based off of or it actually comes from a song by a musician, an avant-garde musician based in New York in the 80s named Arthur Russell, and the song is called Wild Combination, and it's sort of a thematic through line to the show, at least the pilot. So it comes directly from that. But
oh, that's cool.
Sure.
Good answer. All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Wild Combination, for pitching. Thank you again, panelists, for your feedback. If you guys could all sign off on your video and audio, we will move on to our 3rd pitch. I would like to welcome Pussy Talk, Kim Tran, to join me on video. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. You sound great. And whenever you're ready, please begin your pitch.
All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Kim Tran. I'm a writer, director from Austin, Texas. And one thing that has always struck me is how men are taught to be very comfortable with their dicks and like joke about them. And personally, I didn't grow up in a world where that same openness and freedom was given to vaginas. And I think part of that is, let's be real, we still live in a world where female bodies are controlled by, crusty old ass white men. And I say, it's time to normalize the pussy. Like, we gotta have more vagina jokes that aren't just, it smells like fish. So I wanna give a voice to the vagina, literally, in the form of a talking vagina. So this character would have a shit ton to say because vaginas are front and center to our most personal experiences as women, like awkward sex, periods, giving birth. So my project is a live action comedy web series about the bizarre adventures of a considerate, rational woman named Kate and her rambunctious talking vagina named Gina. My show is called Pussy Talk. So Kate, the human, is the audience's entry point in as an average, everyday human woman who tends to hold herself back, as we do sometimes. And Kate just really needs to stand up for herself and take some risks. And that's why Kate's got Gina. So Gina is her talking vagina who don't give a fuck and does whatever she wants. Gina is the selfish, cringy, horny freak in all of us that we're scared to unleash. Like Gina is like if Ali Wong were a vagina. So thematically, it's this comedic Jekyll and Hyde situation, right? And tonally, it's a fast-paced buddy comedy that's raunchy, absurd, but heartfelt. Like think an edgy Bridesmaid meets Broad City. And style-wise, will we see a vagina on screen? No. And not so much because I'm censoring it, but more because I don't think any vagina on screen would do a magical vagina like Gina enough justice. Instead, I think it's much stronger if we take on the vagina's perspective. So I plan to characterize Gina through her point of view shots. So for context, Kate wears jeans and Gina has the ability to like unzip the fly of Kate's jeans from the inside and sort of like peer out through the open fly. So essentially the camera is peering out of the open fly as the vagina. And that point of view, combined with characteristic camera movement, really gets across Gina's perspective, her agency, and her personality. Format-wise, it's episodic. Each episode is around 6 to 10 minutes. It's standalone. And the target is multicultural audiences in their teens and 20s who seek new short-form, edgy streaming content. And I imagine this being developed with a brand that has a track record of doing this sort of short-form content like Stage 13 and How It Developed Special and I Love Beck and Lucy. And each season is short and quippy, like 6 to 8 episodes for watchability purposes. And there's plenty of fertile ground for multiple seasons in terms of subjects and scenarios that Kate and Gina find themselves in. In the pilot, we meet Kate, and we learn that she has a complicated relationship with her talking vagina. So Kate's on a date where she's scared to make a move, and Gina decides to take matters into her own hands, and the date does not end well. And I actually have a short film of this that serves as a pilot sample that I can send if you're interested. For the rest of the season, some future episodes include one where Gina is sick and tired of Kate faking orgasms. And so Gina coaches the guy into actually making her come, but then Gina comes too hard and then the guy's dick explodes. I have an episode where we see Gina's origin story. So we flash back to when puberty hit Kate at age 13 and Gina spoke her first words. Later in the season, there's an episode where Gina finds that she's sexually attracted to other Ginas, while Kate is a little unsure about this. And I also want to do like an occasional bonkers off the wall episode. Like for example, during a full moon, Gina's soul takes over Kate's body and Kate transforms into like the most extreme embodied version of Gina, like think man to werewolf transformation. And so like Kate's hair is all puby, she's all sticky and she's like humping everything and she just has a crazy night about the town. So why the vagina as a metaphor? One, I think it's funny. Two, it's powerful in that it allows me to tackle hard subjects with creativity and absurdism. And three, sometimes you just gotta let your pussy do the talking. And that's the end.
I was laughing and smiling that entire time. Thank you so much. Just a slight different from Wild's combination in tone.
Just a bit, you know.
And Christine, when you come back on, let's start with you.
Yeah, no, I was also had a smile on my face the whole time. I like how you started with like the sort of gap in storytelling historically about subjects, you know, the female genitalia and like the time is now. And I also, you know, it's just very imaginative and creative. I almost wanted to hear about the anecdotes that you got into later, a little bit more earlier, just to kind of understand the dynamic between the two, and how, you know, her pussy would be this sort of, you know, advisor, bodyguard, ride or die, making the choices and the desires that maybe she's not capable of doing, because I was instantly leaning in for that information. And you have it. It just took a little bit to get there with the anecdotes. So yeah, those were my 2 top headlines. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. That was a great job. I was smiling as well. I was also smiling because we have a show coming on our network called P-Valley this summer, Pussy Valley.
I saw that.
But we can't use it. You can't use the word in the advertising. Just something for you to think about. So you had me at hello in that sense. Would like to know, and I think it would be great if you incorporated a little bit more about the structure of each episode, how, the sort of beginning, middle, end element of it. Yeah, but it's bold.
Thank you.
I loved it, and I have actually been lucky enough to I've seen the pilot, so I've seen sort of how it is structured, and so I was excited to hear your pitch. Yeah, and so my one note, first of all, I love that you're normalizing the pussy. That's great. I'm kind of tired of dick jokes myself. And so I'm ready for like a new crop of jokes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love dick jokes too. I just raise the bar on the vagina jokes too.
Exactly. But I just sort of have an overall question about, I guess, more the style of the show as a whole, is sort of how you're envisioning it, because the first episode feels very grounded, it's a very, it's a surrealistic idea, but it still feels very grounded. And then talking about the second episode where, his dick explodes, it sounds like an entirely different show. And so I wonder sort of how you're planning on balancing out, is it something that, you're leaning into the comedy of it's so, off the wall bonkers, or is it something where you're going to ground it a little more reality? Just sort of, I was a little confused about where you're sort of planning on landing.
Yeah. Can I answer that, Brandy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So definitely the pilot, I think, is more grounded. So in the pilot, at the end, for those who haven't seen it, Gina is able to magically make Kate orgasm. And so I think using those heightened moments like that, where you really see Gina's magical ability, digging deeper into that magical and blowing it up to where I think I do want, using this web series as a sort of going bold and exploring different things, for example, the dick exploding. I think that one, it leans more into this horror genre at the end, and the same with the one where she's the full moon transformation one. And so with each episode, I think there are certain different tones with each one, but unifying throughout.
Cool.
Hopefully it's a cohesive piece. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
I love the pitch too. I thought it was hilarious. I agree with a lot of what's been said. I wanted to know I felt like I knew more about Gina than I knew about Kate, which maybe isn't.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
That was sort of my biggest thing, is knowing more about our main character. And then I wondered if you'd seen the movie Teeth, which seems like it might be a tonal cousin of your dick exploding episode.
I have not. I'll check it out. Is it a short film or a feature?
No, it's a feature.
Okay, I will check it out. Thank you.
And I thought the pitch was great. You answered a lot of those questions with the comps. You answered why this is a compelling story. You answered why now. The whole thing about the old white man not getting it, that was great too. You always want to play on that sort of thing, especially if white guys like us are in the room. So I thought all of that was great. So keep doing all of that, because that stuff works.
Thank you, Travis.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists. Make sure to check out P-Valley on STARZ, which I believe comes out in summer. And thank gosh we're on YouTube and can say pussy as much as we want, because thank you all. If you can all turn off your videos, we will go into our fourth pitch. There are 6 total, so we're halfway there. And I would like to, our next pitch is the Bisley Boy. So if Chris Bolin and Matt Carlson will join me on screen, and just a little trivia, because it's fun like this. We chose these pitches months ago to go at South by Southwest, and I had no idea till yesterday, but Matt Carlson and I go way back and work together at Theater Me Too in New York about 10 years ago. So it's we got to
it's been a little while
here today. So, you know, always feel like that. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and you can
course.
when you're ready.
Great, thanks. A documentary I directed called A Secret Love was set to premiere at South by Southwest and will be released by Netflix on Wednesday. It tells the story of two women who lived a secret life for 70 years. While packing up the house where they spent their life, these women find a suitcase. Inside are forgotten love letters. The signature is torn away, making it impossible to identify the author if the letters were ever found.
Growing up, I made my own bell bottoms, and sometimes I wore eyeliner. And I was thrown into the wall by a football player and called a faggot on the street. Now I have a wife, an 8-month-old daughter, and this mustache. I can be John Wayne and David Bowie. It's my decision to make. Gender is fluid, and gender is a spectrum.
The title character of our TV series made the decision as a young boy to pass as a girl. His unmarried teenage mother abandoned him to distant relatives who barely notice when he disappears. He likes wearing dresses, the power and the attention it gives him. He keeps his gender a secret to everyone, and at the end of the pilot episode, he is crowned Queen Elizabeth I of England. The Bisley Boy is an alternative history of the life and reign of Queen Elizabeth, written about by Bram Stoker in a book called Famous Impostors. The name of the boy was Neville Fitzroy, and he was the bastard grandson of the king. The actual Elizabeth died of the sweating sickness as a child during a pandemic similar to our current health crisis. Terrified of the king, servants dressed Neville in Elizabeth's clothes to buy themselves time, but the king never noticed that a young boy in a dress took the place of his daughter.
The story of the Bisley Boy was probably invented by men, jealous of a powerful woman. It explained Elizabeth's unwillingness to marry and spared men the indignity of being ruled by an actual woman. But what if it were true? What if the white makeup covered her stubble and the ruff around her neck disguised her Adam's apple? This is a queen who told her soldiers before battle that she had the body of a woman, but the heart of a man. The Bisley Boy explores gender nonconformity and power dynamics through the prism of the past. We see a man dressed as the queen, learning how difficult it is to move through the world as a woman. We also see a noble woman dressed as a man, allowing her to explore the freedom of masculinity. Both genders get to try out what it means to be the opposite sex and experience a life completely different than their own. The series balances the intrigue of House of Cards with the social complexity of a film like The Favorite.
Our title character is the bastard grandson of Henry VIII. Though born Neville Fitzroy, we will now refer to him as Elizabeth and use feminine pronouns. Discarded as a bastard and an embarrassment to her family, Elizabeth has emotional scars and deep empathy for the powerless. Ferociously intelligent, she's initially uneasy with her rise to power, but eventually becomes a brilliant politician. Deeply conflicted by both her gender and sexuality, Elizabeth is tempted at times to walk away from it all. Amy Dudley is nearly the reverse image of Elizabeth, a shy noblewoman forbidden by her husband to leave their estate, who nonetheless travels to London for the coronation dressed as a man. Amy finds confidence and freedom as a man and eventually becomes the lover of the Virgin Queen.
Robert Dudley, often portrayed as Elizabeth's great love, is reimagined here as a gay man in a loveless marriage to Amy. Charismatic and arrogant, he is both fiercely protective of Elizabeth and hungry for power. William Cecil is an even-tempered and pragmatic politician who serves as Elizabeth's political advisor. Initially unaware of Elizabeth's secret, he eventually puts the interests of the country ahead of those of the Queen.
Our first season focuses on the need for the Queen to marry, which of course is impossible. Robert offers himself in marriage as a possible solution, which Elizabeth considers, but he's already married. At the suggestion of Robert, Elizabeth asks an actor to wear the clothes of the Queen and stand in for her occasionally. Elizabeth then dresses as a man for the first time since she was a young boy and walks the streets of London alone at night in disguise. She struggles with her identity and with the choice she made as a child.
During these walks, Elizabeth meets Amy Dudley, and they eventually have a passionate affair. Amy Dudley, not Robert, is the true love of Elizabeth's life, and Elizabeth eventually confesses her identity. William Cecil discovers the truth about Elizabeth as well, and inevitably her relationship to Amy. At the end of the season, Cecil has Amy killed, framing the murder to make it look like Robert did it to free himself to marry the Queen. Cecil seeks to protect the secret of the Queen's gender and stabilize his Protestant government. Elizabeth, though shattered by the loss of Amy, makes the decision to become the Virgin Queen and places the interests of the country ahead of her own.
Interior, dressing room, morning. A slight pale man stands in front of a mirror wearing a woman's smock. His hair is cut very short, the hairline beginning to recede. Two women help him get into the makeup and clothes of a woman until he is dressed in the full regalia of a queen. The doors fly open and Queen Elizabeth stands before the court.
That's it.
That's it.
If our panelists could please join us back. We're really taking you all over emotional. And our panelists.
Yeah.
If we can start with you.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done, guys. You flowed back and forth smoothly. Obviously had this pitch practiced and really well done. So really great work there. I found myself sort of just curious more about like the length of this and the structure and all that. You did a really great job painting the picture. I really felt like I was there and I could see it. But once I could see it, I know a lot of the buyers like to really be told what you're going for exactly, and if not, are you open to their sort of creative suggestions of which, what could it be?
Mm-hmm.
So that was really great.
Great.
Thank you.
I thought you guys did such a great job. It was so eloquent. You jumped back and forth so well. I got such a great sense of like the drama and the intrigue. Your comps were really good. This is such a super minor thing, but I almost wonder if that last line where you're really setting the stage and like painting the picture of the sort of opening, I wonder if you start with that. And
Yeah, I had the exact same thought.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
We wrestled. We changed it back and forth. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it would be useful because for me, it took me a minute to really dive into the story. Once you started really painting the picture of what the storyline entails, I think, it's not for lack of trying to frame the theme and the personal experience, but for me, I did, to be totally honest, got a little bit lost following the threads all leading up to, the story that you were telling us. But that would be my minor note. And I think that, yes, perhaps an actual set piece, a visual set piece might help.
I almost dressed up as Queen Elizabeth for all of you, but I decided not to do that.
I told him that was a bad idea.
Yeah, it might not work.
Just sort of bouncing off of what Christine is saying, and I completely agree, is I feel like I have a really, really good sense of what the pilot is. I have a really good sense of what's happening. I have less of a sense of sort of where it's going overall. You touch on it several points towards the end. I'd like a little bit more of that early on and a little bit less a backstory between just the two of you. I really like that. I understand we're working a time constraint of 5 minutes. Bigger pitch, you'd have a little bit more time. But yeah, I want to know a little bit more again about the structure, just sort of as a whole, because the comps are great, and I felt like I could see it. But I felt like I really have a good idea of the pilot and a little less about the series overall.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with that. The comps were great, very helpful to sort of have that in mind while I'm like, for example, The Favorite as something that took a story that we're familiar with, but completely turned it on its head. I think that this has that potential as well. It's definitely an original idea also, but an original, a new take on a world that people love. I mean, the royals they just continue to fascinate us. And this also has some Shakespearean elements. So the combination of those two things, feels like something that could go a long way, so long as you're able to convince the people on the other side of the desk that it has legs, that it is a world that we're entering into, not simply an event, right? So that we know that there's enough story for multiple seasons.
Yeah, and I think just quickly, your pitch will really benefit from having the more time. You can. We all know that, but I had to say it.
I just wanted to say one last thing was I just really wanted to commend you on your use of pronouns and really treating the story appropriately. That was really well done. I can tell you've done your research. You're not just coming at this from an outsider perspective. It felt like you very, very much ingrained yourselves in this world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any final thoughts? All right. Thank you, Bisley Boy, Chris and Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, you guys.
We'll go off again. And we're going to move on to our fifth pitch, which is called Beached. So if Sean Godsey and Nick Collins will join me on the screen. See them to what? I liked that. That was like a great reveal. I very much dramatic part of that. Thank you. Just make sure, say hello, make sure your volume's good.
Hello.
Hello. All right, that'll work. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you. You know, Nick Collins and I have always been a big fan of creature features and horror and practical effects. And so we wanted to create something where the creature was the star, a practical creature. And so we created Beached, which stars the whale, a humanoid creature from the depths of the ocean. He's a whale humanoid who comes to the surface to take away humanity's pain. Nick?
Less than 5% of the ocean has been explored, and humans have no idea what sleeps on the ocean floor. The essential, the idea behind Beached is it's an urban horror comedy television series. And while there is like an arc that goes through the entire series and some reoccurring characters, each episode serves as its own entry point. What we want to do is take the character of the whale, that's like this ancient immortal being from the ocean, and kind of jump to different time periods with him. And one episode he's in modern day LA going to a burrito truck having a conversation with someone. The next episode he's in the Civil War on the Union side, and he's fighting, and he's involved in that. He's involved in history. He's jumping around in ancient Egypt and being worshipped like a god. So essentially, he's been around for thousands of years, and his driving need is to kind of help and heal and protect people. Sean?
Right. And the season, we have an 8-episode season all planned out. And like Nick said, we would jump around to time. It would be focused in modern day, and then jump back to his most exciting tales kind of throughout time. But each episode exists on its own. We're a big fan of modular worlds and modular episodes. So while there would be this longer story arc of the whale being hunted down by this creature killer, Rimpao, who's this kind of also ancient pirate creature, each episode would deal with the whale helping someone and kind of saving their soul. And it's this series that combines, me and Nick are both heavily involved in comedy and horror. So it's a series that combines sweet character-based comedy with terrifying creature horror.
Yeah, and while it's about terrifying creatures and monsters and beings and special effects, it's very grounded and very much based in realism. I mean, the tone that we were kind of going for is the tone of Atlanta, where it's surreal, but it's very grounded and very relatable. Also a huge impact on the tone is Del Toro's Hellboy and the original Men in Black and the 90s live action Ninja Turtle movies. It's essentially imagine the Ninja Turtles. They're horrifying looking, but that same sweet, hilarious, fun-loving personality. And then I think, again, why it's important to come out today is because it's about a character who looks physically horrifying and disgusting and gross. And you think he's this monster who's going to hurt you, but he's really going to help you, and he's kind and he's loving. And, every episode, every single episode is the whale kind of uplifting someone or making them feel good about themselves. I think that is important for today in a very, kind of heavy time we live in. Especially in the quarantine, especially with the horrific man who's running the country. And
yeah, we want to begin each episode with horror, with each person the whale's introduced to thinks he's a beast. There's whispers about him in the world. But then by the end of the episode, you love him, and he's a very likable character, even though he's grotesque and disgusting.
And most of Beach takes place in Fridge City. It's kind of like a tangled metropolitan mess of alleyways and vandalized subways and flickering lights and filth. It's very much about these people in the city the whale is helping. And then a huge part of that is, the creatures living in the deep. And the deep is the world that all these fish humanoid creatures live in. And essentially they've gotten tired of, eating what's in the ocean, and they're hungry for something else now. And now they're coming up to Earth, and they're going to start eating human beings. And essentially, the whale is a character who used to eat human beings. We discover in flashback episodes, like the rest of the creatures in the ocean. But he gained empathy for his food, not unlike some vegans in the world. So yeah, the whale is just all about love and compassion. And Sean?
And that's our pitch for Beach.
Great, thank you. If we can have our panelists join us back on screen, and Caleb, when you're unmuted, we will start with you.
Yeah, guys, great work. I'm a big horror fan and a big comedy fan, and so this checks off a lot of boxes personally. Just sort of talking about your pitch overall. My first note right out of the gate is I would love if you guys were able to get to sort of what the format of the story is way earlier. I didn't really know sort of how the story was being told until really towards the end. Because we're jumping around in time. There's this, this city that it takes place in. I was a little confused about what the shell really of the story is, in which you're telling these other stories where maybe you're going back in time or going forward in time, or you're telling more about the creature, but sort of contemporizing it and staying there for each episode, and then it's a flashback or something like that. I didn't really know what the format as a whole was, and so that'd just be my first note.
Yeah, it's wonderfully inventive, but I was a little bit confused, and it would have been helpful to have a log line that really told us exactly what the show was at the top, and then go into some more of the specifics.
Yeah, I agree with Jenny and Caleb, and think you could maybe spend some time building out the world, right? So we understand the city that you mentioned, the creature, and the sort of where the creature came from. All of these things are, I think, genre fans in particular, that's what they're watching for, is the world. So just helping let everybody understand what it is that they're diving into and how it works would be helpful.
Yeah, and with a pitch like this, you always have to think about how we assume we know nothing, and you guys obviously know everything and know so much more. You'll benefit from having visuals and being able to do a little bit more. If you're able to show something, like when you're doing this pitch, like later on, if you can show things and then speak to it, that'll help the buyers connect a lot more to it and make sense of it quicker. So if you start maybe with structure, then go into some imagery and talk about the imagery, and then go back to talking about structure and how you see it flowing, that could really be helpful in just sort of getting whoever you're pitching to understand it quicker, to then get more engaged, to then be able to ask questions that are intuitive to what you guys want to tell them,
Yeah, we have made multiple shorts of this, so we do have the look of the whale, and yeah, so far in pitching, that's been our pitch, has been showing the shorts.
Yeah.
You have multiple shorts? I feel like I saw was there one at South by?
Yes, there's one at South by, but we have 3.
There's 3
the
episodes.
First one is at South by, but we have 3 that we produced before submitting and everything.
Got it. Yeah, because I saw the one at South by with the roommates.
Oh yeah.
Together. Yeah, so I have the benefit of having seen it, and I remember seeing it and being like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. It was unexpected. It was very, I think unexpected, the odd sort of tonal quality that you had to it. I feel like the Del Toro, is sort of like part of it, because it has almost like a magical quality to it.
Yeah.
But I found myself asking a lot of questions specific to this pitch, which, it could be a good thing, because I leaned in and was curious. Yes, about the world, but also just about the bigger allegory, like the bigger sort of morality tale, like how do humans, like when you say take away their pain, I like what can that thing do to take away pain? Is it a magical thing? Is it really obstructing or saving someone's lives? I think those were the kind of details that I was really curious and kind of waiting to hear about. because I kind of wanted to know, what was the bigger sort of, metaphor.
Great. Any final thoughts from our panel? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sean and Nick and Beached. If everyone could go back off.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. And we will go to our final pitch of this evening, which is Southfield Supernovas 4228. If Ruthie Morantz and Sophie Finkelstein will join me on. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for closing us down here on our final pitch. And you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Hi, I am Ruthie Morantz, and that's my co-creator, Sophie Finkelstein. Southfield Supernovas 4228 is a half-hour coming-of-age dramedy about 16-year-old CJ, who starts the first non-male robotics team in her Detroit district, and against all odds, leads them to the top. School isn't CJ's thing, so she knows robotics is her only ticket into college, but she can be impulsive, which gets her kicked off the COG squad, her school's all-boys robotics team. Over the season, CJ will recruit an eccentric team of underdogs to fight the patriarchy one robot scrimmage at a time. Fun fact, robotics is considered a sport, both by public schools and ESPN, and has become a hotbed for recruitment by companies like Apple and Google. Real-world robotics teams have created prosthetics, developed affordable automated wheelchairs, and an Afghani girls team has recently developed an accessible ventilator built from car parts. There is real money, job placement, and most importantly, a sense of community. We love that robotics is inclusive. If you show up, you can play. All skill levels are welcomed and needed, both technical and non-technical. Our show is a celebration of the teens who will discover the future while discovering themselves.
Our main character, CJ, lives with her dad and two older brothers. She can change a timing belt with her eyes closed, but she doesn't want to end up in her family's struggling auto repair business like her brothers. She's committed to doing the kind of work her late mother, a self-taught coder, never got to. Unfortunately, CJ lets her temper get the best of her, which is how she ends up crashing the COG squad's prize robot when she doesn't get the driver position she was promised. She would be the first from her family to make it to college, but with subpar grades and her stubborn commitment to being an engineer, she needs to get back on a robotics team like yesterday. CJ's only choice is to start her own team, and by the end of the pilot, she's assembled her band of misfits along with a begrudging coach. Think a league of their own, but robotics. It isn't going to be easy. They'll have to find sponsors, scrounge up a practice space, develop a business plan, and figure out how to work together. Plus, all the community resources are already allocated to the COG squad. But once CJ sets her mind to something, nothing can stop her, except maybe the $7,000 entry fee.
Our show is a hormonally charged, upbeat teen dramedy about finding yourself when who you are and where you're going is in constant flux. Our characters will grapple with adult themes such as sexuality, inequality, and finding a career path. We want to embrace the humor in this group of unlikely team members who have zero knowledge of robotics, mixed with the drama of being in the trenches of the competition. In each episode, we will celebrate what makes our characters different and discover each teammate's superpower and kryptonite, delving into their personal stories to get to the heart of why our audience will root for the Supernovas. There's the TikTok star who knows she's the next Steve Jobs, the non-binary Fortnite master, and the young drag icon who begs his way onto the team to make costumes for robot prom. Yes, that's a thing. Visually, we see the show living in between single camera shows like Sex Education and Glow, expressing the diverse spirit of CJ's world with bright visuals and a cinematic feel. By the end of season 1, Southfield Supernovas will be crowned the most improved team in the league, but there's still a long way to the World Championships, as we'll see in later seasons.
The show lives in Detroit because Michigan has the most robotics teams in the country and some of the biggest sponsors and recruiting companies like GE. We want to use real life stories of teenagers in robotics and weave them authentically into the fictional world we're building. We see the show's audience skewing female from Gen Z to boomers, as well as the tech and gaming community. We also think it will strike a chord with outcasts and people who never felt welcome in traditional team sports. The show will feature a diverse cast, and we hope to further promote inclusivity within tech and inspire kids from different socioeconomic backgrounds to dream big. Robotics inspires confidence in these teenagers, and we expect this message to resonate with a larger audience. Ruthie and I make content centered on female adversity, drenched in humor, and always covered in rhinestones. We keep going back to a photo of a girls' robotics team proudly holding their robot and wearing their uniforms, tutus included, and we feel like we're in the right place. Our show is for the underdogs and for all the girls that are told you can't or you shouldn't, but who did it anyway. The show is for all the women who pioneered in an industry when there weren't any footsteps to follow in. FTC team number 6547 articulated the thesis of our show better than we ever could. So we'll close by quoting their eloquent Instagram post. 1, break stereotypes.
2, lead.
3, innovate.
4, add sparkle.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, and thank you for panel for jumping right back in. Jenny, when you're ready, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I love that. That was awesome. I thought, if talking about beginnings and endings, I thought the way that you ended it was so perfect. I can see what this show could be. It's so much fun. I thought there was maybe a little bit too much about robotics up at the very top of the show. And I thought you could go a little bit more into sort of the episodes and the structure and the characters as well. I know that you don't have a ton of time, but I love the title. I love the world. I think that you did a really good job of sort of conveying the energy that the series is going to have. It's so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like I know these characters. I know what the pilot is. I know what the first season is. I know where it's going. You have a call to action. I know who your audience is. It felt very tight. Yeah, I agree with Jenny though. Maybe just a little bit less of the robotics at the beginning. But other than that, I feel like I know exactly where this takes place. Your comps are solid. They're contemporary. Yeah, that was really strong, guys. I don't have a lot of notes, honestly.
Thank you.
I agree. That was really fun. That spoke to the 13-year-old girl in me and to my niece, who I would love to be able to show it to. It's interesting because Jenny said that the ending felt like it was at the right place. And I would actually challenge you guys to incorporate a little bit more about why you are telling this story now at the beginning, because your passion comes through, and that passion it's everything. And once people hear that, they will lean in and be even more excited. And then you can end with something equally as just emotional and heartfelt, but I think having some at the beginning too would be really helpful.
Yeah. Hi, Ruthie. Yeah, that was great. I was really impressed. I love the pacing. I love the, how you got into the story and the sort of broader themes and how it connects to just today. So great job.
Yeah, I thought it was great too. Really well done. The ending was so strong. I think Susan's point is really on about how that ending can maybe could be at the beginning, or there could be changes a little bit to the beginning to sort of go with how strong that ending is. And I think that really hits hard with buyers. Also, I kept thinking about the actual female robotics team from like a few years ago in San Francisco that made the championships in Houston. Did that play a part in this at all? Or are you guys fans, or was that just totally?
There's a bunch of them actually right now. When you look it up, each story is kind of more inspiring and exciting than the next. I think we were particularly thrilled by the one we mentioned, which is this Afghani girls high school team, which built $300 ventilators out of car parts when the country didn't have enough ventilators like last week. So
yeah, what they're doing is incredible. So I kept thinking back to that. It's awesome if you could also, when you have more time, if you throw more of that stuff in there too.
Yeah.
People will really relate because they'll connect to other things that they've heard and seen, and they'll be like, oh, this does really check a box. So
thank you.
Any other notes from our panelists? All right, thank you, Southfield Supernovas. Thank you. That was actually all 6 pitches. A huge thank you to our panelists for joining and donating your time and giving your very valuable feedback. Susan, Travis, Christine, Jenny, and Caleb, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Just to close us out one more time, I just want to thank our partners at South by Southwest. Again, we were supposed to be doing this live. Thank you for allowing and working with us to make this a virtual event. The winning pitch will be announced on Thursday evening. It will be announced via social media as well as at our creator hangout, which is a virtual series we produce at SeriesFest Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. This week we're focusing on creating series arcs, and we have an amazing group of panelists for that. We also have tomorrow a watch party series continues with NBC's hit show New Amsterdam and a Q&A with star Ryan Eggold. We are also open for submissions for our women directing mentorship with Shonda Land and our executive elevation mentorship. So please visit SeriesFest.com for more information on all of that. And in addition, South by Southwest just announced that they had a lineup of great, amazing virtual programs. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. Make sure to check that all out. As a reminder, SeriesFest is a nonprofit organization, and in this current climate and tough times, we are relying on donations. While all of our virtual programs are free, we are asking for suggested donations of $10 or anything you can give us if you are able to. You can visit SeriesFest.com/donate. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the pitchers. It is so hard to get up and do it in 5 minutes. And just what a wonderful group of 6 pitches. Thank you all for joining us, and stay safe and have a good evening. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.